I am Mick Alexander, your host for the Green Zone Talks. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being on time. And those of you who joined early, thank you so much for coming early. We are Image Wealth Management is an emotional intelligence people development company. We specialize in training, coaching, and programming that develops people from the inside out. Many people ask us, what the heck is the green zone? So the green zone is catching on, but know that the green zone is a mindset. It is a mindset of being winning, friendly, highly communicative, engaging, but most importantly, non-judgmental and respectful. It's a mindset that we like to bring to our various roles in life. And our goal is to help people understand this mindset, tap into it often, and carry it with them wherever they go. In this case, we're talking about the Green Zone Talks. And the Green Zone Talks is a virtual space that we want you to carry this mindset to and be able to help people understand where you're coming from and to be able to be open to hear other people's opinions about various topics that you may or may not be familiar with. But instead of judging them, just be open to hearing them, and maybe we'll learn something, and maybe we'll learn something together. So we have the Green Zone Talks, which is once a month, and that's what you're participating in today. And then we have the Green Zone Community, which is also a virtual community, although we may meet in person from time to time. Green Zone Community is a membership base that you can get access to on our website, imagewealth.com, and you can join this community and come and share your concerns, especially as it relates to your business roles or maybe even your personal roles that may be stumping you and you need extra support. On this community, there are also articles and videos to continue your emotional intelligence self-education, if you will. We learn as self-paced community, but also as a group. So if you're interested in that, imagewealth.com will get you there. We're always looking for speakers, sponsors, and ideas for our Green Zone Talks. So if you have any, please drop us a line at imagewealth.com. You can contact us through the website, or you can contact us on imagewealth@live.com. We'd love to hear from you. Today, we have an awesome speaker for our Green Zone Talk. As many of you know, each month we feature a subject matter expert. And that subject matter expert will talk to us a little bit about what they do and how it relates to emotional intelligence. We'll tie those topics together for you. I'm going to come back to Denisha in just a minute because my slides are not in order. And we should be looking at this slide, which talks about our upcoming Green Zone Talk with Chief Reginald Johnson with the fire department, Charlotte Fire Department. He is actually the first African-American chief in the department. He graduated from the University of Maryland, and he's going to be talking to us about using emotional intelligence in a crisis, especially as a first responder. So with that, I am going to share with you some interesting facts about our dynamic speaker today. I got to tell you guys, I'm so impressed with, can I call you a young lady? You're younger than me. So with this young lady and all that she has accomplished so far in her career, it is absolutely mind-boggling. But I am elated to have her as my guest today. Miss Denisha G. Harris, who is the purchasing and contracts manager for the town of Cary. And today she's going to be representing the North Carolina Minority Women in Business Coordinators Network. And she'll tell us more about that in just a second. She is a proud graduate of East Carolina University, where she got her BS in sociology and her master's in public administration. She also has gotten her public policy and international affairs fellow, or was a fellow at the Princeton University. Very impressive. Some of her awards, she received the Robert H. Wright Alumni Leadership Award, and it is their most prestigious award for leadership and positive change. She also was a 40 Under 40 Leadership Award recipient. Her certifications include the CPSD Professional in Supplier Diversity and CLGPO. Lots of letters, young lady, lots of letters. Local Government Purchasing Officer. She also earned her executive certification in strategic diversity and inclusion management from Georgetown University. And in 2021, she became certified as an economic inclusion officer from the UNC School of Government. Welcome, Denisha G. Harris. Does the G stand for GOAT, greatest of all time? I think you are. Hey, Denisha, what's up? You are muted, or I can't hear you on this end. Can everyone else hear her?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Sure can.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, thank you so much. It's such a wonderful introduction. It made me blush.
That's not hard to do because you're always smiling. So, Denisha, tell us about, first of all, the North Carolina MWBE Coordinators Network.
Sure. So the North Carolina MWBE Coordinators Network is a professional association of supplier diversity advocates just like myself. We work for public sector and private sector entities, and we come together to share resources, share best practices, and really develop ourselves as professionals so that we can do our jobs even better to make sure that we're advocating for our diverse suppliers and making sure they're getting a piece of the pie, getting those contracts.
Excellent, excellent. How do people join it? So let's get that out the way. And let me stop sharing my screen.
Absolutely. So the Coordinators Network is a professional association of supplier diversity advocates. So individuals who are members are typically those that serve in supplier diversity roles, MWBE roles, business inclusion roles. But we have a lot of supporters and sponsors who are small businesses, who are minority women-owned firms. And there are many opportunities to sponsor our quarterly meetings and our conferences that happen 3 times a year. You can also serve as a sponsor for our website, which is currently under construction, but is coming back bigger and better. And so we allow sponsorship opportunities for our website, getting folks in the know about our calendar of events. So all of those opportunities are ways for small business owners and MWBEs to get their name out there. We'll be in Fayetteville, North Carolina, actually on April the 28th. And we try to highlight MWBEs in the area that we're visiting. So we become fully integrated into that area. So business spotlights are another opportunity for MWBEs to get to know the coordinators, because that's really, you know, a majority of what we do is doing outreach and engagement so we can get to know the business community. And so when there's a contracting opportunity, we can send an email, pick up the phone, make a call and say, hey, this would be great for you. You should go after it. So we are a professional association where we develop and train, but we also integrate our MWBEs as much as possible.
Well, I know that is greatly needed as someone who's worked a lot with small business owners and trying to get contracts. I know that associations like this is very important. And today we talked about how can we bring something really special to these individuals that will help them in getting and moving the needle forward and getting those contracts from a emotional management point of view, because we oftentimes talk about the things that small business owners need to secure contracts and do business with other businesses, or B2B and B2A. But we seldom talk about what it takes mentally to get there. And so today, I wanted to spend a little bit of time with you and tying some of that together. We're talking about the 3 principles to using emotional intelligence to build B2B and B2A relationships. And I know you and I sat down and we came up with those 3 principles. So I'm going to let you start with the first principle, and then we'll tie it into emotional intelligence as we go on. Take it away. Principle number 1.
Absolutely. So principle number 1 is actually something that I believe has application across professionals, whether you're a business professional or someone who is working for someone else, even individuals who may not be in the workforce. When we think about developing ourselves, I believe this principle is very, very important. And it's one that I teach myself all the time as well. And that is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. When we think about emotional intelligence, we understand that it's about recognizing, managing, and being able to understand your emotions and the emotions of others. And when we think about being uncomfortable, you have to know what makes you uncomfortable. For some, it may be public speaking. For others, it may be selling yourself or promoting yourself on social media or out in the public, whatever it might be. For others, it may be changing and shifting your business model with the market to meet the demands of our customers. So there are times when we can feel uncomfortable, but we know as entrepreneurs that one of the things that is a characteristic of an entrepreneur is someone who's able to pivot, adjust, and even capitalize on opportunities when others may be shying away. That individual has to not be risk averse, has to be willing to take that leap of faith and try something new and try something different and not being afraid to fail. One of the things that they teach you in business school is fail first and fail fast, because that's how you learn. So when we think about entrepreneurship, being uncomfortable is almost a state of being. It's almost an opportunity where you're like, I'm comfortable being uncomfortable. If things are going too smooth, maybe I'm not growing, maybe I'm not accelerating, and maybe I'm not meeting my goals as I should. So when I think about this principle, I think about I work in the public procurement space. And so I get to meet with a lot of different entrepreneurs. And I encourage all small business owners and MWBEs to get to know your purchasing officers. Get to know the individuals that are facilitating the contracting process, and you will see their names on the purchase order. Get to know them. It may be uncomfortable at first. You may have to be not assertive, but you may have to be persistent, if you will, because purchasing officers are interacting with dozens of people on a daily basis. And so you may have to be persistent to make that connection, make that call, but feel comfortable just walking in and knowing that as a citizen, as someone who pays tax dollars, you should be invited into that room and you should be able to have that conversation. Another thing that I encourage folks with is when you're working with the public sector, everything that we do is public record. So that means you can ask and request for a copy of that solicitation that you did 2 years ago that matches the commodity that you want to sell to government. You can even ask for the winning contract and ask for the winning proposal so you can study and understand what possibly could have made them come out to be number one. Those are opportunities that we should take because government may or may not be a best fit for your company. So when we think about government, a lot of times it comes down to price. And so understanding, hey, is this my market? Is this where I need to put my time? All of those things are important when it comes to getting to know your procurement professional. And that's just one area.
I couldn't agree with you more. I feel that one thing entrepreneurs especially might want to understand is that every time you enter into an unfamiliar territory, it's a place you've never been, and it is going to be uncomfortable, right? But also after you get comfortable with that level and you get to the next level, that's a new experience and you're going to be uncomfortable again. So you're right. Getting comfortable with being uncomfortable will help you in the long run continue to move up as you grow. From an emotional intelligence standpoint, I say that presence is key. So a lot of times why we are uncomfortable in a situation is because our mind is in 1,000 different places. When we meet with these individuals, we're thinking about, oh, what am I wearing? Do I know what I'm going to say? Do I have are my business materials in order? All these things, instead of just calming the mind and being present. And that is something that takes practice for a lot of people. And so it's important to get the tools that you need to be able to calm your mind under pressure. So very good. I love principle number 1, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. What do you have on principle number 2?
Well, I have more I'd love to share on principle number 1 if you would allow me the opportunity.
Of course.
And I love what you said about being present and being confident. Confidence is a huge part of selling yourself. If you believe in yourself, then I, as a purchasing officer, will believe in you as well. Again, when we think about public procurement, price is very important. It's our bottom line, if you will, because we're stewards of public dollars. But at the end of the day, individuals do business with individuals that they know and individuals that they trust. So if you are able to exude that confidence, if you have that preparation and able to calm the stress and the nerves, and again, it's not going to happen the first time. It's one of those things where you have to pivot and keep going, and practice makes perfect. But as you exhibit that confidence, that will definitely read through to us as procurement officers. And I would also say, when it comes to building those relationships, be very comfortable talking about yourself in those one-on-one conversations with procurement officers. But thinking about our current market, be comfortable talking about yourself on social media. Be comfortable talking about yourself when you're presenting at, say, a conference or talking to a trade association. If you come to the coordinators network meeting and on the spur of the moment, I say, hey, we have this business owner in the audience. Would you like to give a 1-minute spotlight? Be comfortable with that elevator pitch, so you're always ready to sell. And also, sometimes that comfort doesn't necessarily have to do with you yourself personally, but sometimes we have to be comfortable shifting our business model, shifting for the market. So, for example, one of the things I think about in public procurement, over the last couple of years, particularly with COVID, we've had to shift our business model from accepting paper bids and accepting things in that form with doing things online. Accepting electronic bids. So that may be a skill that you need to learn, or that may need to be something you become more comfortable with. And even if that's not your thing, you can hire for that subject matter expertise. So being able to shift with the market and being able to adapt and change to an area that may be uncomfortable can help you win customers, particularly in the market. And when I think about customers, I also thinking about shifting with customers. Sometimes there can be small changes or adjustments that you can make in your customer relationships that will cause that relationship to solidify and for you to gain loyalty. One very simple example, there are some customers who prefer communication via text. That seems very informal. That seems very out of the box. But I've experienced it, even with myself being on the road and on the go. I give out my phone number to some of my vendors that I'm in communication with regularly, and we do a text exchange because that's the quickest way to get to me. So again, being comfortable with that mode of communication on a customer by customer basis could be a great opportunity for you to win that customer. So again, sometimes we have to think outside of the box and be comfortable with adjusting and pivoting to the market and what's required in those situations. And just being confident in what you're doing.
To piggyback on that, what I heard in there was change. And change is not easy for a lot of people. A lot of people, they wrestle with change until they get familiar with something, and then they're comfortable there. They don't want to change again. And what I find is that things are happening so quickly with technology and just, the way that our society is evolving, that if you are a person that struggles with change, it's going to be very difficult to win in business or in many areas of your life. So again, get the tools. I'm big on tools, the tools that will help you be able to embrace change and learn. And with change, it requires practice. You practice the tools, you get more and more comfortable. So I love that. All right. What's
And
your second principle? Go ahead.
I'm going to do one more plug. And don't be afraid to get a mentor or a coach, right? Image Wealth, a great opportunity for you to gain those skills. And that's something we all have to do. As we grow, as we go to new levels, we have to expand our skill set. And sometimes we need mentoring and we need coaching. So don't be afraid to access those tools.
Well, thank you for that plug. I appreciate your confidence. I wasn't going to do it for myself, but thank you. So what's our principle number 2?
Sure. So our principle number 2, this principle is it's business, not personal. And that principle is really about accepting feedback and accepting constructive criticism. It's in recognizing that all feedback is good feedback. I challenge everyone to think about the last time they phoned a large corporation or institution and remember what happened when they got off the phone. If you're willing to answer a quick survey, please hold the line. Happens all the time. And that's because these companies and corporations understand that how they are perceived and how their customers feel about them will determine if they're coming back. It'll determine if they're willing to tell their friends about how great this company is or how great their customer service was. When we think about customer service, we automatically think of certain companies and organizations. And I would dare say Chick-fil-A is at the top of the list for a lot of people. They think about Chick-fil-A, I will wait in that 30-minute line in order to get my chicken sandwich because that smile and that great customer service just makes me feel happy about being there. And the great thing about that is Chick-fil-A has the mindset of customer first. Let me think about the experience from the customer's standpoint and viewpoint. Another example of that is Disney. So Disney teaches classes all over the world about how they get people to wait in hour-long lines just to ride a ride, right? And the reason they're able to do that is because they're able to regulate how people feel about the Disney experience. Does it feel like they're going fast? Are they being entertained while they're in the line? And so in order for Chick-fil-A, in order for Disney to get to that level, they had to know what their customer was thinking. They had to understand, hey, are they tired of waiting in line? What's too long? Is it 10 minutes or is it 5 minutes? What would make them feel better? Being able to talk to a person one-on-one, or is efficiency more important? And I want to go to a kiosk and just get my ticket. Or maybe it's a combination of both. But we won't know that until we ask our customer. So never be afraid to get feedback, even if it's not what we want to hear in the moment. And even if it maybe doesn't feel good. But it's important to get that feedback so we can make sure that we can adjust and pivot and capitalize on those opportunities to be able to provide a better customer experience, which increases our revenue, increases our client acquisition, and gets that word of mouth out there where folks want to refer you to that company.
You hit on my sweet spot because I am very much sensitive to customer service, probably more than most because I'm coming from this emotional intelligence mindset and the green zone mindset. And I can't believe how some organizations, many organizations, have let customer service go by the wayside. Now, when I've had these conversations with some of the larger organizations, it seems the reason is because they're struggling just getting help, right? And to me, that's not an excuse. So you're struggling to get help, but when you do get that warm body, then customer service, training and development and education becomes key. Every person, and I heard you say the word regulation. It's important, especially as small business owners. when you're bringing on that very first person or the 10th person or the 100th person, that you have a regulated training and development experience on how you want your customer to experience to have their experience with you as an organization. It's not a heavy lift. Think about how you feel when you walk through the door, what you would want that customer to experience, and then teach these people and teach them to teach the next person. You don't have to do all the customer service training yourself, but there needs to be some sort of formalized training, and customer services should be top of mind. I'm really offended that it is not. As an organization that trains customer service programs or teaches customer service programs, I believe that investing in that customer service experience is as important as research and development into the product. Because if you don't have any customers, you really don't have a business, right? So I love that. The other thing, you said something in principle number 1 that struck me, and it was, you are stewards of the public dollar. And I think that's very important for small businesses to realize when they're getting this feedback, that it may not be personal that you didn't win the bid. They do have to answer for those dollars spent. And even in a public business or personal business, if you're doing business to business, that small business owner that you want to be a vendor for also has to be a good steward of those dollars so that they can meet payroll. So I think it's going in with an open mind. I recently had an opportunity to bid on a contract, and we did not win it. And it was because they went with someone who was willing to do it at no cost or willing to do it gratis. And I say that's great because I've done my share of gratis work, but understanding why they didn't choose us was very important to me. And I had to make about 5 phone calls before I got to the bottom of why, because I knew the bid was fair and I really needed to know. So I think do your homework and be persistent in trying to truly understand why you didn't win a contract is equally as important as winning one.
I agree. And again, I'm glad you were persistent because again, that feedback will help you to understand, is this my customer? Like you said, it wasn't that the bid wasn't fair. There was just another outlying factor that contributed to why you did not get the bid. And so there may be opportunities where that will win out and it may not fall in your favor. But in those opportunities where we can align, that's where your sweet spot is. And as government agencies, as procurement officers, and as business owners, we're all trying to find that sweet spot where we can align together. And one thing that I also wanted to kind of bring to the spotlight is when it comes to selling to government or even selling to any other customer, understanding that customers' needs is probably the critical part of the process, right? So when it comes to government, because we are, public stewards of these dollars, price is king. A lot of times it's what we're looking at first. It's not the only thing we're looking at, but we do look at that first. So again, that free contract or in gratis was probably an opportunity there. But also we look at quality. Also, we look at who is responsible. But when we think about government, understanding what government buys, understanding what type of product or services they may need is critically important. So you may have a diverse business that can offer a number of services, but when you go in to make that pitch, don't get so caught up in content that you forget the context. So be certain that you're pitching a solution to your audience, pitching what they need to hear. When we think about elevator pitches, there's a statistic that says about 90% of people forget their audience and just remember the content. And when we talked earlier in the practice, we talked about an entrepreneur by the name of Leah Brown. She is the former owner of A10 Clinical Solutions, which is right here in the Triangle. And she was on a show, How I Made My Millions, and she was very successful in that venture. She came to the organization that I worked in formerly and did a presentation for entrepreneurs under the theme of building highly optimistic and prepared entrepreneurs. We talked about it as building hope, right? And so one of the things that she left with the audience that led to her success is that she thought about her audience when pitching her business. Her business could do multiple things, but she thought about what was a solution for her audience, not the story that she wanted to tell about how she built this business and she was an African-American female. All those things are great. And in context will work. But when it comes to selling, what is the solution that that organization is looking for? So again, sometimes we have to think in those ways and in that manner when we're pitching to companies. But that's just another opportunity to take feedback and another opportunity to really package something so that your audience can see the value in it.
That's a great point. Again, to me, that sounds like change, being willing to change what you've been comfortable with and giving that pitch. Some people work very hard to come up with the elevator pitch. They practice, they do it in front of people, get the feedback, and they finally get the sweet spot. And so to be able to change on a dime or to be able to shift it according to your audience could be a challenge for most. But I say you're right. I say it's important to be able to do both. Have what you're going to say in mind, but be willing to make that shift as necessary. Very good. So we have two, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And we have, it's business, not personal. Be willing to get feedback. And I wanted to add to that too, being sympathetic. I know we talked a little bit in our practice session about sympathy and how it relates to business. And again, it goes along with customer service. I shared with you, I recently had a horrific customer service experience with a phone carrier, and which I went to buy this very expensive phone. I don't know how they went from $50 to $1,200, but somewhere along the line, they jumped prices. And, it's not an easy task for a small business owner. I go into this place and they tell me, well, that's an Android. I don't use Androids. Now, if you came in here and asked me how to use your iPhone, I could help you. But yet you sold me this Android. And I went on to explain that I was needing this to be fixed because I run my business predominantly from my phone as I'm traveling a lot and things. And there was zero sympathy. So I left there and I went to another store and got the exact same answer. I don't use Androids. I use iPhone. Now I'm thinking, well, maybe I should have got an iPhone for all you iPhone users out there. But I'm an Android user and there's nothing wrong with the Android, except I needed some guidance on this new model. And at the third store, I got the same thing, but then there was another person who said, hey, I understand what you're saying. I don't really use them, but I can get online and ask some questions. I can call the home office and get an answer for you. And this person was willing to do that. But it took me 3 separate stores to find one person who was willing to help. To me, that's lack of sympathy, lack of training, and just a lack of connection with the customer. So, it is business, not personal, but it's personal when you're the customer. So let's remember that. Number 3.
I see a lot of folks in the chat chiming in on their pick for the best phone to use. I am Team Android. I'm just going to say I have used Android for as long as I've had a cell phone, but very excited to learn about new and different things because I am willing to change.
Okay, for the record, right?
For the record. So yeah, we've gone over 2 of the principles, and this third principle, again, I'll just give a disclaimer. I am naturally an introvert. So as introverts, we tend to be self-reflective and we tend to think about self-regulation a lot. And so a lot of these principles will kind of lean towards that. So my third principle is probably the one that I feel is the umbrella principle for entrepreneurship. One of the things that, we saw when doing our research, Mick, is that emotional intelligence on some levels is more important than cognitive ability when it comes to being an entrepreneur. There is research out there that says that emotional intelligence is 8 times more important than cognitive ability. And that means a lot. And the reason why I feel that's important to bring to the forefront is because being an entrepreneur can be challenging. Being an entrepreneur requires and draws on many skills and many requirements that maybe we wouldn't think about, because it's their relationship, they're building emotional intelligence, all of those things. When we think about entrepreneurship, we know that in order to be an entrepreneur, we have to work in highly volatile environments. You may have shifting markets. You may have adjusting supply chains. You may have external demands from customers and the regulators. All of this creates stress. You may have sudden loss. Maybe you lose your best employee and you did not anticipate or expect it. You have to make solid decisions on the fly. You have to be able to form positive relationships and still be a subject matter expert in iPhones and Androids. We have to do all of those things as entrepreneurs. And so that's a lot to take on as an individual. But the other thing about entrepreneurs is that they do have that emotional spark that says, yes, I want to take this leap. I want to do this thing. I want to make an impact. I want to make a difference. And entrepreneurs tend to be able to pivot, to adjust, and even to capitalize on down markets. When you think about entrepreneurs, the housing crisis, we had so many folks losing their homes, which was devastating and sad, and families were devastated. But there was still a market there. Right. And, there was still a business there. And as sad as it is to think about that, as entrepreneurs, sometimes you think about how you can capitalize on those opportunities and still do the greater good. Absolutely. But I bring that up to say, even in stress, even in those hard times, having high emotional intelligence allows you to be more resilient, and it allows you to be able to make those decisions. It allows you to be able to cope with change. And a lot of that is because you are self-motivated. You don't depend on circumstances. You don't depend on whether or not you win this bid because you know you're going to win the next. You don't depend on whether or not this person has an affinity for your product because you know the next person will. You're going to take the lessons learned from that no, but you're going to go on to your yes. We think about Tyler Perry. A lot of us have heard his story about how he was told no so many times, living out of his car, didn't have any income or wealth, but he knew that he was a winner. He knew that he was going to be successful. And we know how we enjoy his stories and his movies and his plays. And we're so glad he didn't give up. Think about Oprah Winfrey. She has told many times that she was fired from one of her opportunities, her employers. But yet she went on to host one of the most highly rated talk shows and now owns her own network. Both of these individuals exhibit this quality or this principle. And I'm getting to my principle.
Well, let me just say before you do,
Okay.
I want to talk about Oprah and Tyler as your examples. They both of them talk about how once they thought the road to getting to success was hard, but once they achieved that success, how difficult their lives became with people asking for help and them learning how to say no. And so my point is that we think we want a certain thing until we get it. I mean, you hear this story all the time with the people who hit the lottery and all of a sudden your whole life changes and you're faced with a lot of different scenarios in which you're having to check yourself and what you really believe in and what your code of ethics are. So with this principle that you're getting ready to talk about, it's about self-awareness. It's much about knowing thyself. So with that, what's our third principle?
Our third principle is no one can stop you but you. If you give up, it's a done deal. It's a wrap. But if you don't give up, I believe that you will win. And so just remember that no one can stop you but you. Having emotional intelligence requires that self-motivation. It requires you to be internally able to regulate those feelings so that you can push past those negative emotions. And it also means creating an environment where you are affirmed, creating an environment where you can celebrate the small wins, where you have the opportunity to have accountability partners, folks that understand what you're going through and yet can encourage you in the process, someone that's going to push you to make those goals, to set those goals, and to push forward towards those goals. All of those opportunities are available to you when you have a high emotional intelligence and you're able to be self-motivated. And so, there's another statistic that says that motivated entrepreneurs produce higher quality work. So when we think about selling to your customers, having that high level of motivation means that you're willing to accept that feedback. You're willing to take the lessons learned and move forward, producing a better product or a better service. You're constantly evolving, you're constantly innovating, and you're able to do that because you're not dissuaded, you are not impacted by opposition. Now, does that mean that you're invincible? Does it mean that you're Wonder Woman? As much as I would like to be Wonder Woman, because I think she's pretty cool.
I mean, you're not? I thought you were.
Listen, don't tell anybody. I'm trying to keep up the facade. But as much as I wish that I were, I'm not. And that's why it is so important to have those folks around you that are very positive. And that's why I love being a part of the Coordinators Network, because that's exactly what the network was founded on. I see a few network members in the audience, and thank you so much for joining us today, because that's what we do. We're in a space and a place where maybe we're the only in our organizations, and we're advocating on behalf of the business owners because we believe in them. We want them to succeed. We know it's the right thing to do, but it can be challenging coming up against institutional barriers, a host of things. But we rely on each other. We say, friend over here, I'm running into this situation. I don't quite know how to handle it. Have you run into this? What did you do? That person will check on you the next day, be like, how did that meeting go? Did everything go okay, go well? And so when you have that opportunity to build that community, just like the Green Zone community, you have the opportunity to rely on each other and to build each other up. Somebody will tell you to go on vacation when you need to go on vacation. When I first started my role at Town of Cary, one of the entrepreneurs that I advocate for sent me a very sweet email because she and I were talking about some things. She sent me a very sweet email. And she said, this is what I do. And she's a CEO of her company. She said, I take 2 vacations a year. I suggest you do the same. Now, I had never taken 2 vacations a year, like intentionally, that weren't involved with some family function or something like that. And I literally took that to heart because it's necessary when you're constantly pushing out that you have something coming back in so that you can really build yourself up to the point of optimal performance, right? And so it's so important to keep going, to stay motivated, to put in that 1000%, but know how to do self-care, know how to create rest for yourself, whatever that looks like. I also love productive rest. I am a big proponent of that. I have a very creative mind when it comes to certain things. I love to plan events. I love to do all of those things. I've been planning Thanksgiving since I was 10 years old. No lie. We had programs and everything. So I just love doing it. And it creates fun for me. It's something that uses the other part of my brain. I also like to get out in nature. I like to hike a little bit. I like to do those fun things. So engage in productive rest. But do those things that will refuel yourself, and just know that it will add to what you bring to the table as an entrepreneur.
And I want to add to that, it's okay if you do not understand as a high achiever, because I'm guessing that most people on this call are, if you don't really understand how to do that productive rest, it's okay. You can learn. That is what groups like the Green Zone community and the network and the coordinators network is for you to say, hey, I don't know how. Give me some ideas. Show me. Give me the tools that help me on the emotional management side. I'm finding that a lot of entrepreneurs, I got a call yesterday from a young lady, and she is an extremely accomplished high achiever, but had an incident in which she broke up with someone she truly loved, and it created a ripple effect in her professional life. And she needed some support. And she also needed some accountability once we talked about some of those tools to practice and some of those ideas, that she would go out and practice them and come back to me and say, hey, here's what I tried. Here's what worked and here what didn't work. So don't be afraid to admit that when it comes to your emotions, you may not have a way to manage them. You may need help. You may need a program that helps you to regulate and understand yourself better in that way. I find with high achievers, we go naturally to what we're good at, and we go with it because we're good at it. The things we're not as good at, which can be emotional, we tend to ignore those or put them to the side. But eventually you will be forced to look at them. So there's that. So do it sooner than later.
Agreed.
Self-awareness is key. So
Absolutely.
we have a bonus, right? We have a bonus. And let's talk about that bonus for a minute. We have a little more than 10 minutes, and I wanted to save a few minutes for questions. I'm sure there probably will be a few. So let's talk about that bonus in about a minute or two, and then let's open it up for questions.
Okay, sounds good. And so as I was thinking through the principles that we were going to mention today, I did think about a fourth principle that I thought was also important. It takes me outside of my self-awareness and self-regulation zone and into the relationship management zone. But that is about building relationships. And the principle is build relationships up, down, and all around. And what does that mean to me? Building relationships with your customers, building a relationship, knowing what they like, what they don't like, how they like to be communicated with, how not, what do they need from you? What is the perfect solution for them? Also, building relationship with your peers, those who are in your network of entrepreneurs that are doing the same things that you're doing, running the same race, and you can possibly work together to increase your revenue for your business. So let's say that you know the market is shifting towards digital, the market is shifting towards social media, and maybe that's not your bag. You can partner with a marketing professional who is also your colleague to help on the marketing side, and perhaps you can help that individual on the coaching side, whatever it might be. And so you've created a leverage that will allow you to increase your return on investment, increase your revenue. So build those relationships and build them in a trusting way, right? Go in positively. One of my favorite phrases is positive energy leads to constant elevation. And I truly believe that what we put out is what we receive. So build those relationships with colleagues. Also build relationships with individuals that are where you want to be. So as you think about entrepreneurs that are maybe larger, have conquered more sectors or different spaces, think about mentor-protege relationships, thinking about coaching relationships. I have a lot of mentors. Some of them, they know that they're my mentor. Others, they don't, because I follow them on social media and I see what they're doing and I'm just like cheering them on all the way and thinking about how I can capitalize and be in that same space. So build those relationships up, down, and all around.
Excellent. Yeah, there's the mentor-mentee relationship. I find that once you get a certain level of business, that comes naturally. People always want you to share with them, how did you do it? How did you do it? But don't forget to seek out mentors, no matter how high you get in business or how successful you get as well. So with that, does anyone have any questions that for my guest today or myself? If you do, just unmute yourself and ask your question. And I'm looking through, I don't know if there were any questions. If you don't feel comfortable asking your question, drop it into the chat box as well.
I see someone has asked for my contact information, and I will drop that in the chat.
So with that, I want to remind people about our next Green Zone talk while we have a minute, which is going to be with Fire Chief Johnson from the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. And I think it's important because I recently had an event where my mother fell. If for those of you who know me well, you know that I'm the caregiver for both of my senior parents. My mom fell on the porch, which is a cement porch, and broke her nose, and there was blood everywhere. I have already proven several times that I'm good under pressure. Most entrepreneurs are. They're good under pressure. When something happens, they go into problem-solving mode. But what I didn't know was I'm only good under pressure as long as there's no blood. And there was so much blood that I had to use every emotional intelligence tool I ever taught anyone to get through that situation. So I think it's going to be a fascinating talk from someone who teaches people how to deal with crisis, who has dealt with many crises himself. And as entrepreneurs, we're constantly putting out fires, no pun intended, or pun intended. And so it'll be a really, really powerful conversation. As I'm not really manning the chat, someone else is. Do we have any questions in there? I don't want to miss anyone. No. So if there are no more questions, Denisha, I'm going to ask you to just kind of wrap up with a final thought for this talk. We have our three, let me repeat them again, our three principles, which is, I wrote them down just because I tend to forget. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. It's business, not personal. Be willing to get feedback. Be willing to give some sympathy. And no one can stop you but you. What say you in your final words?
Well, first, I'd just like to say thank you, Mick. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to chat with you today. We chat and have these conversations offline all the time. So it's great for us to have a chance to chat and have these nuggets drop kind of instantaneously as they do. I've so appreciated learning and getting connected with the Green Zone and the Green Zone community. I love having a space where there's no judgment and you can have an opportunity to really share and really encourage and uplift each other. So this is awesome. This is wonderful. And I'm also excited about all that came to chat with us today and listen in. I hope that you've received something, one nugget at least, that was valuable to you that you can take with you and remind yourself of. That's very important in this process for me individually, is just to write things down and just remind myself, because those days do get difficult and challenging and hard, but keep that constant reminder in front of you. And also, I was so excited to have the opportunity to chat on this subject because emotional intelligence is critically important to business. The statistics tell us it's 8 times more important than your cognitive ability. And so take the time to pay attention to and to develop your emotional intelligence skill sets. And I pray success for all. Would love to connect with you all. Please connect with the Coordinators Network so that we can engage you and with our agencies. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
And I want to thank you. You've been an awesome guest, full of information for our small business owners and those who are not small business owners. It is always a pleasure to pick your brain and to share ideas with you. I want to thank my audience for coming today. I know you're busy, and 1 hour out of your day can seem like a lot, but hopefully you found this very worth it, and you will continue to join us once a month on our Green Zone Talks as we find subject matter experts that you can learn from. Connect with us on imagewealth.com and on LinkedIn to learn when our next Green Zone Talk is and when our other opportunities arise. And we will see you in the Green Zone next month.